Dante's expression froze when he saw his new account balance after making a down payment for his new apartment. He had just come out of the real estate building too, and he was initially feeling good about everything. Dante sighed and looked to the sky. At some point, drops of rain began to fall, which was kind of ironic given his current financial circumstances. Were the heavens crying from sadness through empathy or laughter through mockery? Dante sighed again. Truly, poverty would make any fellow have poetic and deep thoughts. However, despite being in debt, Dante could truly claim to be poor. After all, he had grown up in an upper-middle-class family with 2 loving parents and a nuclear as well as extended family that were largely supportive and capable. Dante smacked his face and changed his train of thought. You got this, man, you made this decision and now you have to live with it. Reminding himself of his own, probably, poor life decisions, Dante ordered an Uber and set the destination to home. He then sat in the back lazily and leaned on their side, placing his earphones in as he opted to listen to hardcore rap music. Mother *CKERI killed 3N *** gas, FCKED 3B *TCHES, and then robbed 10 banks while smoking weed, and... As he soaked in the mindless words, his thoughts began to wander. He turned to look outside the window and saw the setting sun, which he initially felt was a sign that an old door was being closed in his life while a new one was being opened. Ads by Pub Future. However, his balance had slapped him back to the reality that while a new door might have opened, what lay behind it was not exactly a frat party, but might be a neighborhood shootout. Dante looked at the box in his bag and felt his eyes gleam. This was another reason why he had rapidly fallen into debt. The latest Huawei G20, a spectacular handheld phone made for enthusiasts and professionals who wanted to be productive on the go. Its price tag was over $1,500 for Christ's sake, and even the latest iPhone 15 was even $300 cheaper and about 20 years behind in technology. What could Dante say? It was 2030 and China's technology was on the rise. After America's business empire declined due to the failure of fiat money and the betrayal of Saudi Arabia by eliminating the petrodollar, China quickly showed its fangs. Not to mention, after raiding and plundering Taiwan, they had access to semiconductors and their technological might soared rapidly. As a second-generation immigrant to the almighty United States of America, Dante was ambivalent about these happenings. For one, his relatively dark skin won him no favors with most Asians, and secondly, as someone who lived in America, his livelihood was tied to its continued dominance. Like riding on the back of a tiger. Dante's eyes flickered. Truly, he was thinking about all sorts of things, but the only thing he should consider now was what to do next, his future. As a 21-year-old young man, he had endless prospects ahead of him. A second-class upper degree in BSc software engineering, a relatively good-looking face, and a good credit score thanks to intuitive parents, he had a great starting point. Many would kill to have credentials like these, despite the debt. Not like any American was debt-free anyway. But what was the source of Dante's problems was not any external factor, but lay internally. You may know what it's like to be a very clever kid in your formative years who loved to read, exercise and generally loved to explore new things. But had that all beaten out of you by the mindless school system which requires repetition rather than creativity. You may know what it's like to be well-to-do during your school years, always having the latest games and computers, tinkering with them, and destroying enough of them that you got scolded often. Ads by Pub Future. You may know what it's like to see your classmates struggle with their studies while things come to you relatively easily, until at some point you stopped putting in effort and got by with C's. You also may know what it's like to love your cousins and extended family, but the pressure to perform due to endless comparisons cause a rift between you all during adulthood. If you know any of these, and most likely all of them, you would understand Dante's conundrum. Intelligent but unmotivated. Competitive but quick to give up. Tunnel-visioned and unable to multitask. And most crucially, driven for success through uniqueness but craving to do so independently. Such led to the current situation where a young man from a family that makes more than $250,000 a year, is over $2,000 in debt. This sudden drive for independence and the unwillingness to rely on his parents baffled the duo to no end, making them wonder if their son was going through a phase, but at his age. Or if someone was crudely influencing him. His father wanted him to follow the same path he did and become a high-class architect to inherit his medium-scale company that mostly worked for upper-class contractors. That way, he could push his son to the top of the business, lower the steep learning curve and also pass on his contacts and connections in the industry. His mother, a chemical engineer working for the now beaten up and bullied Pfizer, wanted him to learn an applied science. So she supported his decision to enter IT, but his father was not too happy that his hard work and small empire would die with him. Ads by PubFuture. After all, how could a coder link up with architects? Unless maybe he learned 3D design and rendering. Dante sighed for the third time in less than 30 minutes. His rash decision to rebel by doing what he wanted had led to a small tension in their nuclear family that became slightly more intense after the last Thanksgiving when his cousins were revealed to be doctors, pharmacists, and lawyers, and he opened his dog mouth to say, "I am an app developer." Well, he was lucky it was 2030 and even the older generation understood that IT was the future. If it was around 20 or 10 years ago, most would have classified him as a failure right off the bat. The painful question wasn't why he chose to be an app developer. The hard-hitting question was, what app have you made? None, nothing. At least, nothing he wanted to show. Obviously, a few were from practicing, tests, and projects, but none of them were going to go anywhere. Dante looked down and gripped the phone box in his hands. With this new device, that should change though, as this device was built for people like him and came with many tools and suites to make coders excel. He already had the code written on his laptop after spending over 3 weeks and screaming over 400 times at syntax errors, and only needed to package it and run the test build on the phone. From there, any errors could be handled on the device itself and then curated carefully before a soft launch among peers and friends. Just thinking about it made Dante giddy. He almost wanted to slap the back of his Uber driver's head and tell him to hurry up, but was left speechless when he saw that there was traffic ahead of them. He couldn't very well point to the pavement and say, "The sidewalk is good enough. Go," like some 100-year-old British vampire who liked to pose and throw knives in stopped time. Dante could only sit back and wait while his thoughts run abound. Switching between excitement towards the seemingly promising future and anxiety towards the possibility of failure as well as disgrace. Eventually the Uber came to a stop before his house. Dante paid the fare with his credit card and increased his debt even more. However, with an exceptional credit score of 750, his credit limit was around $15,000 anyway. It was more than enough for him to live on until he turned his first profit. Whether it was Muscovic, Billy the Gates, or the Zookmeister, all had started from the bottom and had deceptively moving origin stories that motivated impressionable young men like Dante into risking it all. With that much financial leeway, he would be able to kickstart his grand life. Assuming, of course, that everything miraculously works out on the first try, and he doesn't fail over and over until his debt runs high. And is able to make enough profit off whatever he creates that he can clear his debt, start a life and be fully independent. This is the beginning of Dante's story, and it was quite impressive already. Dante got out of the Uber and stood before his family home. It seemed like a typical suburban neighborhood, but it was actually a semi-walled as well as gated community for the elite among the middle class. His eyes gleamed as he held the box in hand tightly and walked up to the gate of his house. The security guard at the front was watching videos on TikTok to pass the time and greeted Dante when he passed by. "Yo Dante, what's up? You're back from the shopping?" Dante turned to smile at the neatly dressed and muscular guard who actually had a stun baton as well as a pistol strapped to his waist. "Eduardo, what have I told you about TikTok? It's a psyop from China to make the American youth stupid. Also, the shopping went well." Eduardo rolled his eyes and waved his hand, not willing to descend into a tinfoil hat battle with Dante, who was like a storm when he started. Dante wrung his lips with dissatisfaction seeing that he couldn't share his conspiracy theories with another unwilling person. However, his attention was soon taken away when he entered his home, then saw that his dad and mom were seated in the living room. For being about 50 years old each, they still looked really good, mostly thanks to his mom who emphasized eating healthy and exercising at all ages. His father was a handsome man with light caramel skin, a pair of square-rimmed glasses, and short-cropped black hair. Apart from a white polo t-shirt displaying his broad chest, tucked into a pair of elastic Burberry shorts and a pair of green Crocs, he also wore a bored frown. Beside him was his lovely mother, a tall Eurasian woman that inherited the best characteristics from both ancestries. Long, silky black hair, 2 light blue eyes, fair skin that was neither pale nor pasty, but healthy, and the typical small, extremely cute face of an Asian woman. Apart from her favorite blue sundress and a pair of slippers, what else would his mom wear when at home? Ads by PubFuture. Dad, Mom, I'm home, Dante called out to them with a smile. David, his father, turned backward and saw Dante, then nodded. Good to see you're home safe, son. If you're hungry, let me know and I'll cook something up for you. Dante rolled his eyes at his father's usual stoicism. All right, Dad, sure. Aileen, his mother, smacked David on the shoulder. Stop being childish just because he doesn't want to become a clone of you. Smile at your son, honey. David simply looked away, folded his arms, and harumphed. Aileen chuckled and Dante rolled his eyes again before going upstairs to his room. He was an only child and had no other person staying here apart from the 3 of them, so his room was rather large with its own walk-in closet and bathroom. He removed his clothes and tossed everything to the side before slipping into a singlet and a pair of mesh pop shorts that didn't require one to necessarily wear underwear because they had a net inside. He then sat at his desk and opened his $3,000 laptop with an Intel i9-17900K, 128GB 5000 MHz DDR5 RAM, and an NVIDIA RTX 6090 Ti Supermobile. The specs were the latest of this year and it was definitely a beast. Dante had no issues gaming or working on it and his attempts to code had gone without a hitch so far. He then opened the Huawei G20's box and unpackaged it slowly. It was always nice to unbox new tech, as long as you could ignore the wails of your wallet from the intense blow it suffered. After unboxing, Dante plugged the new phone into the charge and saw it was at 75%. He let it charge to full, which only took like 15 minutes on Type-C fast charging, and then started it up. He had already backed up his old phone onto his laptop previously, so he went ahead and plugged it in on the spot. He set it up using his backup, so in a matter of minutes, this phone was just like his old one, and ready to be used. Ads by PubFuture. He then opened the productivity apps that came with the phone and saw the app he needed. He opened it up and imported the finished code as well as the necessary files from his laptop. True to its advertising, it only took it around 1.5 minutes to complete this, so Dante chose to run the app. The loading screen came up and Dante waited patiently. Now would be a good time to talk about the app Dante was making. As Dante's lecturer had once joked, app developers made apps in response to a need, not a want. It was the only way for an app to break through and become a legendary super app. So what did people need in this day and age that wasn't already covered? Dante had thought long and hard about it, doing extensive research, talking on many boards and social apps with randoms to see what they lacked. The answer was always straightforward. I need something that can fix my f-king life, bruv. That's not something an app can do. So Dante's response to this was to make an all-purpose app. It was Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, WhatsApp, Telegram, eBay, AliExpress, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Spotify, Deezer, YouTube, Vimeo, Twitch, Mixer, Tinder, Grindr, and Chrome, Firefox in one. It was a social media app with streamable music, pages for various e-commerce stores to sell wares, a page for people to watch uploaded videos, be they short like TikTok or long like YouTube, and even watch live streams as well. Also, it had an inbuilt browser. From an objective point of view, the idea wasn't bad, but its fate would be decided by the execution. However, doing something like this would require near-perfect execution, especially on the back end. Dante had agonized over building this thing for weeks and had finally put something together. After spending so much time and effort, he no longer even thought about failure. It was either this thing succeeded or he didn't even know what he would do next. Now that the screen was loading, he couldn't help but anticipate whether it would activate without a hitch. For one, you should know that even if one develops an app, one can't just think of the technical details, but also of the aesthetic and external details. So in order to make the app stand out from any competitors or just from the millions of productivity apps out there, he coded in a special intro. Ads by PubFuture. When the person clicked on the app, they would see the app's logo for about 2 seconds before a transition would occur and they would be brought to a semi-realistic 2D background of a floating island. Lines would appear on the screen saying, "Are you ready to enter the world of eternal enjoyment?" And then they would pass through an animation similar to entering the animus or when a certain character accesses the full dive. Then, you go to the login page or the home screen depending on whether you've logged in already. Yeah, the line and the various stuff were super corny, you didn't have to tell Dante about it, he knew. It was just a placeholder till he got a better idea, besides, it was not the point. The app finally loaded up, much to his excitement, and took him to the screen. Right away, he noticed some issues with how the app lagged and that the resolution of the floating island was not optimized at all. This didn't dishearten him, as he never expected the first test build to be perfect. No experienced programmer was that arrogant. In fact, most lived in fear of their code, believing that every line hid a potential bug. If it ran too smoothly, rather than be happy, the coder in question would sneer and know that it was a trick. The bugs were hiding until the final version was published, then they would bare their fangs on the end user's devices and tarnish your reputation. Dante clicked the button to switch from the intro scene to the actual login page, but something wrong seemed to occur at this point. A familiar and fearsome prompt appeared before him that every coder hated. Error at line 34,598, syntax error. Description, #square root p minus, psi equals, minus z close angle bracket, plus z ha 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 quantum entangle my balls b asterisk tch. Cannot be read. Ignore and continue. Dante was embarrassed and then furious. I put the bloody line in a hash. Why the hell are you reading it? Which editor does that? Ignore and continue, of course. It was just something he typed into the editor near the jump command that led to the login page because he felt like, well, the first screen switching to the second screen, coupled with the animation, sorta looked like passing through a whole world, so he ended up thinking about the quantum entanglement equation. He was tired, sleepy, and hungry at the time, so he angrily typed that out and felt much better before forgetting about it and continuing onward. Dante was not prepared at all for what happened next. The moment he chose to ignore and continue, his phone began to process the command before suddenly freezing. He only had time to furrow his brows and wonder what the hell was wrong before his phone screen virtually exploded in a purple-black light and swallowed him whole. No sound was made as he was sucked in and he disappeared from his room without even causing a stir. His parents downstairs had no idea that their son was about to be thrust into a world of danger and opportunity. What the hell? Dante shouted, his voice coming out distorted and slow while echoing on itself. He felt like he was being sucked through a straw, hurtling within a tunnel that looked no different from the animation he used for his app. The next second, he was thrown out harshly onto the ground, hitting his head against a wall and concussing himself. He fell to his knees and retched slightly before hazily looking around. He would have been better off refraining from doing so as the visual impact caused him to cover his eyes. So goddamn bright. The amount of neon light that infiltrated his retina in that 1 second was like a flashbang, even to a city boy like Dante. He could only rub his eyes painfully and let his squeamishness recede before raising his head once more. Dante was naturally stunned by what he saw. He was currently in a relatively dirty alleyway, with highly futuristic trash cans that glowed with neon bar lights around the lids and around the edges. Apart from him was a strange-looking cat that had one metallic eye that glowed with a red light and was staring at him with disbelief. In all its 9 lives, it had yet to see such a thing happen. Ads by PubFuture. Before either Dante or the cat could react, an alert was heard. Alert, alert, detected a mass breakout of unknown bacteria from Sector 86. Anyone nearby, please evacuate. A lovely female voice that sounded strangely synthetic spoke out from all around Dante, and he could tell that this warning sounded out from every display in the distance. At this moment, Dante's mind cleared and he inferred many things. Well, everyone complained about Gen Z and their destructive tendencies, as well as their weird social cues, but one strength they did have was adaptability, well more so than the average human at least. Watch enough isekai anime, Transformers movies, Star Wars, and Star Trek, and you'd also have the basic capabilities to quickly accept a situation like this. Either I've progressed in our timeline and gone to Earth's future, died and entered another sci-fi-like world with an identical body and identity, traveled to another world with my original human body, or I've been sucked into a digital or quantum-like world through my phone, Dante muttered as he observed both exits of the alleyway carefully. Judging by the warning, I have brought alien bacteria from my timeline to this place, so option 2 is out. It's either option 1, 3, or 4 and I need to determine which one it is to decide the next move. Dante whispered as he glanced at the cat that was eyeing him up and down. Looking at its red eye, Dante's heart felt a chill. Could the cat's synthetic eye be connected to a larger network, and thereby used to monitor him? So they might have footage of him appearing from nowhere. Damn. Dante fled. He had no idea of the level of tech. It could be early cyberpunk, which was like the game of the same name that was popular a while back, moderate sci-fi, which was like that movie with the blue people, or top-level sci-fi like Star Wars or Mass Effect. Ads by PubFuture. If it was early, he would be lucky. They shouldn't have laser weapons that could disintegrate him in one hit. Anything above early and he was done for. He was just a 21-year-old coder from Earth. What advantage did he have here? Well, he had, possibly, killer bacteria from Earth, but they detected it within seconds, so they likely had ways to contain and decontaminate the place. Dante reached the end of the alley and emerged on a relatively busy street. The people were still stunned from receiving such a weird and unique warning that they had yet to move, so Dante had time to inspect the area around him. Dante's heart sank. Flying cars that zoomed up ahead, people on hoverboards doing tricks and moving where they went, AI-driven robots of different models that walked or performed different activities. Neon lights and buildings that had uniquely minimalistic designs, people using teleporters to move up and down. And worst of all, alien races. Different skin colors consisting of the entire color spectrum, humanoid, quadrupedal, scales, cat ears, wolf ears, insectoids, walking cephalopod. You name it, they were present. In fact, there was a distinct lack of pure human, like him, and the closest to it were the ones with animal features in different parts. Once again, Dante was stunned. He didn't even live in an era where holographic technology was perfected, much less an era of virtual reality, so he had no cognitive failsafe for the extreme visual impact before him. Movies and anime helped him accept the situation, but seeing things in 2 dimensions and seeing them in 3 dimensions was a whole different ballgame. Funny enough, when he exited the alleyway, the nearest species around him were also stunned to see something they had likely never seen before. However, their reaction was faster than Dante's. Ads by PubFuture. Oh my sacred light, is that a pure-blooded human? A giant wolf man shouted in a deep bass voice. I am possible, what would one be doing here in Avalon City? A female cat woman gasped with dismay. I don't care, I'm going to be rich. A squid-like being that had its head area covered by a purple bowl-like helmet with water exclaimed through its device's speakers. Immediately, the squid extended many tentacles toward Dante in an effort to capture him. The other aliens' eyes lit up as they seemed to have woken up from their stupor, and were replaced by a sort of mob-like madness as they charged at the young man. Don't touch him, he's mine. A female giantess who was the size of a small building roared and swung her hand out, smashing many aliens aside. Ha, you are too weak to claim this prize. A scaled man with a mouthful of yellow serrated teeth laughed as he pulled 2 guns from his trenchcoat and fired at the giantess, hands which were about to grab Dante. The giantess screamed in pain as 2 laser beams with a reddish hue tore through her skin, leaving 2 gaping holes within. The moment the croc man fired, another alert sounded as the synthetic voice spoke again. Alert, alert, detected use of lethal weaponry in a civilian area. Dispatching bionic city guards. The moment the alert was sounded, the faces of all the aliens around changed greatly. Many turned to escape while those closer to Dante seemed conflicted for a split second before their eyes became bloodshot. They continued to grab towards him and fought with each other brutally to drag him away. As for Dante, he slowly backed away with a pale expression. As a proud Gen Z upper-middle-class lad, he hadn't even gotten into any situation where hundreds of people would be gunning for his life or body. To suddenly experience that, he was naturally stunned. However, even if he had the sharp senses of an experienced person from Earth, it would be useless, because these aliens moved so fast and so nimbly that it was like he was in a ninja or wuxia movie. There was even an extremely obese female with red skin that had green splotches on her body that moved faster than any athlete Dante had ever seen. If it wasn't for the fact that they seemed to prioritize his safety and wholeness, as well as their constant disruption of each other's attempts to get forward, he would have likely been swooped away by now. Looking at this scene, Dante only had one thought in his head. I need to get out of here. I need to go home ASAP. I need to return to Earth. There was nothing but trouble for him here and he would be better off going back home. All thoughts of adventure and wonderment were beaten out of his mind by the reality that he was overwhelmed, poorly informed, outclassed, and in perpetual danger. It seemed as if the heavens answered Dante's prayers as right before everyone's eyes, he simply disappeared with a pop sound, like a bubble that had burst. All that was left of Dante's short but eventful visit to the city of Avalon was the harmful bacteria. A crazy mob that was stupefied as well as incoming bionic guards who were coking weapons at the crowd, ready to fire. Chapter -4. Dante was unceremoniously deposited back into his room, and his face was still as pale as it had been from the moment every single being on that street treated him as their life's goal. He was panting heavily and sweat formed on his body despite not partaking in any strenuous physical activity. His mind buzzed with thoughts that were flying through rapidly and he realized that he was having difficulty actually getting air into his lungs. Detected that the user is in a state of severe mental imbalance due to heightened fear and panic. Releasing required amounts of melatonin. Suddenly, Dante felt his body relax involuntarily and he felt incredibly sleepy. He only had enough energy to lift himself up from the floor and fall onto his bed before he began snoring lowly. Host is in a peaceful state, and is asleep. Beginning in-depth assimilation to the neural system. Estimated time, 10 hours. Dante woke up and blinked 3 times, his brain barely functioning. Before he could even think, he jumped off his bed and rushed to his toilet before going to take a long and deep piss. The more time he spent excreting, the more his brain fired up and memories came back to him. Now that he was out of the intense situation, he was far calmer about everything and couldn't help but feel strange. First question, what exactly happened? Second question, why had it happened? Third question, how had it happened? Every other question would have its content partially answered as long as he could satisfy these 3. In order to investigate what happened, the first thing was to check his phone and the app he made, which were the most likely culprits. As such, Dante patted himself for his phone and realized it wasn't on his body. He then checked his desk, his bed, and the floor where he landed. He began to panic slightly when he realized his phone was missing inexplicably, but then he remembered something from yesternight. That's right, a voice spoke in my head, and it was also synthetic. Could it be that the Huawei gained some new features after passing through what should be a quantum wormhole? Dante pondered. Then how was he supposed to contact it? In the fictional stuff, they often had to either think or speak. Status. Dante spoke and thought at the same time. Nothing. Dante was slightly embarrassed before claiming himself down and pondering once more. He had an idea and decided to be more direct and not be obtuse. Huawei G20, respond. Dante was startled that it actually worked. A part of him wanted to believe that everything he experienced was a fever dream he made up due to fatigue or excitement, but this practically cemented that everything was real. What exactly are you? How are you able to do this and what happened before I went to sleep? Dante asked 3 of the most pertinent questions rapidly. To answer your second question, I am currently merged with the entirety of your body's brain and neural system. This is my current limitation, as I require further upgrades to be able to extend to your other organs and systems for maximum compatibility. To answer your third question, you ran a program on my previous model which was misread and processed, opening a spacetime anomaly that warped you to another universe. Upon return, you were heavily panicking and hyperventilating, so I flushed your brain with melatonin and forced you to sleep. Dante was amazed. He received the answers directly in his mind and there was no delay or misunderstanding. He understood each word and phrase without any ambiguity that came from listening or speaking to others. He saved this miraculous feeling and then thought about the phone's answers. He realized that there was a good chance it could answer some questions since it seemed to understand some of what occurred in depth. Alright, thank you for the answers. Before I continue, may I know what kind of authority you have over my body and how I can access or control you? Dante asked calmly with his hands on his thighs. I have only partial access to your body outside of emergency situations, limited to scanning, assisting, and boosting. In emergency situations, I can take the most logical options to preserve your safety in the most optimal and beneficial way. Your control is full and unlimited. You only need to think of any application of which you want me to perform, and it shall be done. Dante rubbed his chin and thought about it. I don't have any qualms with this, maintain these settings as they are, thank you, Dante instructed with a smile. Dante wasn't enough of a blockhead to do something stupid like limiting his AI's ability to save his life in a critical situation. He did not believe his thinking or reasoning capacity was better or faster than an AI. Alright then, you changed from a phone with an AI. Do you still have a physical form or are you in the form of nanobots or the like? Unfortunately, I am the most basic AI model available on the market, so I have a physical chip lodged in the center of your brain. Also, because I was not naturally produced and rather converted from a phone, my capabilities and functions are far weaker than even the AI chip I am supposed to emulate. This naturally made Dante frown. No one liked hearing that something they owned or possessed was far inferior to everyone else's, even to the basic standard of mass-produced items. Why did this happen? I saw you said you were modified by an external entity. What exactly was that? Upon intrusion into the alternate world, we were noticed by some form of high-dimensional entity. After we were inspected, it chose to allow us passage and chose the place where we landed. It also modified my form into an AI chip and implanted it into your body perfectly. I was also given basic information about the universe we entered, its laws, languages, and customs. That was how you were able to understand what they were saying. Dante was shocked by this. A high-dimensional life form. So in other words, assuming he wasn't turned into primordial soup by the travel, he could have just been silently erased if he was detected to be a threat by that entity. Dante shook his head. He then thought for a short while, contemplating what was important to him and what wasn't. You said you have scanning functions, right? Can you scan my body and let me know my state compared to the average humanoid organism in that universe? I have already done so while you were asleep. I will now display your information in the standardized method used in the eternal universe and explain what they are or what they correspond to. IA half-cent user, Dante. Age, 21. Race, pure human. Ads by PubFuture. Strength index, 0.3. Agility index, 0.2. Dexterity index, 0.3. Intelligence index, 0.5. Constitution index, 0.1. Vitality index, 0.1. Bionic level, 0. Psionic level, 0. AI chip level, 0.1. Superpowers, quantum entanglement, IA half pound. This is the SDI, the standard display index, for all living beings in the eternal universe when they undergo any scan. Each category has a different meaning. The user denotes who the AI chip is registered to. The 6 body indexes are calculated based on The 6 body indexes are calculated based on your current value versus the basic standard of your species. In this case, it is being compared to the standard of pure humans in the eternal universe. Naturally, a full point is the average. Bionics are physical enhancers that are installed into the body. They comprehensively increase the physical prowess and indexes of a person depending on the level and type. Psionics are mental enhancers that are installed into the body. They also comprehensively increase the mental prowess and indexes of a person depending on the level and type. AI chip level is an indicator of my current performance quality against the basic standard per level. Dante looked at the information and took in a deep breath. He just shut up and digested the information and its meaning for about 10 minutes, thinking rapidly the entire time. Then he focused on one important fact. "You say I can go back? Back to that place?" he asked with incredulity. Chapter 5. That is correct. It is a power that has been granted you by that high-dimensional being, no longer linked to me or your app. Dante suddenly jolted. Right, that app. He then rushed to his laptop and lifted the screen, waking it from sleep mode. Just as he was about to type, he saw a bunch of random strings of code flash by on his laptop as if it were some cheap Hackerman movie. Dante was initially stunned, then slapped his forehead. "Is this your doing?" he asked the AI chip in his head. "That is correct. I can interface with any electronic device, wireless network, or even wired network so long as it's either releasing a signal or has an access point. This is only at level 1, higher level AI chips can remotely access even the most secure intranets from kilometers away." Dante leaned back in his seat and rubbed his chin. Huh, that's super neat and convenient. You are every user's dream. This is just the surface level use. I only acted upon your laptop because I detected that you wished to access something on it. AI chips are designed to be one step ahead of their users, acting on their wishes and fulfilling their wants as well as their needs to the highest degree of perfection and efficiency. Dante shrugged. "Keep it up, I like the proactivity. I have checked the original code for the multi-purpose app you created and copied it into my database, deleting it from your laptop system." Dante nodded. That was basically what he wanted to do, copy and paste the code elsewhere then delete it. He didn't want any liabilities leading to him down the road. Down the road, huh? Dante pushed his seat back from the table and let it spin around slowly. He finally had to think about the most important thing right now, which was his next step. Ads by PubFuture. Knowing about this alternate universe as well as his ability to go and come from it changed everything. His dream to make an app and get a few $1 million from it seemed childish and useless with what he just experienced. The most logical way to move forward would be to make the most of this gift from the higher dimensional being. Dante did not know why it did this, but then did humans ever claim to know what the gods were thinking? It might have done so for shits and giggles, but it didn't matter. What mattered was what Dante would do with it. Dante slowly rubbed his temples, where he assumed the AI chip to be, and then smiled. It was a very dark smile that any young adult born after 2000 would make if they were in the same situation as him. What other option was logical? Of course, it was the make the most of his opportunity. To gain the best of both worlds. He might be a backward, uneducated dog in the eternal universe, but that could be changed with time as he integrated into their world. More importantly, just a smidgen of tech and knowledge from their world could help him build an empire in this one. No. Dante stood up in shock. No, he had been thinking too small. Where he landed was just a random cosmopolitan city on a random planet he didn't even know the name of, in a random galaxy within the eternal universe. With the knowledge and advantages he could glean from the eternal universe, he could take over Earth and expand outward. Conquer the solar system, then the Milky Way, then the entire home universe. Then, use the resources of the home universe to counter-invade and take over the eternal universe. My God. Ads by PubFuture. Dante sat down with a frown. However, how many years will that take? Just growing his pedigree in the eternal universe to acquire information about top-level tech might take a while. Not to mention, how was he supposed to expand outward without manpower? Humans can only give birth so fast. Dante's eyes lit up. That was one way, but he'd watched the movies and played the games. Trying to mass control organic species would always backfire when they developed things like a sense of self, and start to desire luxuries like freedom. Dante nodded. Synthetic humanoids made of metal with human skin and features were much better. He could control them with a single powerful AI that was linked to their central processors, which would ensure peak efficiency and loyalty. Of course, that was all far in the future. Whether it was on Earth or on the other planet, he was broke. Even if he returned to that city and, assuming people didn't lunge after him again, he had absolutely zero of whatever currency they had. Assuming he could even get things like gene serums, bionics, and psionics, how would he buy them? Was he supposed to sell his booty on the corner for quick cash? No, Dante needed to plan things properly. First, he had to contrast and compare, as in what did Earth have that the people in that universe valued or needed? Well, apart from pure human DNA, which was why they were about to accost him, nothing else really. Dante briefly considered robbing a sperm bank and selling the stuff in that city's black market, but he wouldn't even sell his own. After all, something so precious that could get random civilians frothing at the mouth for it was something that would make the news. Dante had to make sure it was squeezed for its maximum value, and by the time he re-entered that world, those who could make the most of that value would soon swarm to that planet to investigate his traces. This was why he hadn't yet popped back in to take a peek. Not only that, but he had to make some common sense preparations first. Ads by PubFuture. Dante stood up and walked downstairs to see that his mother was washing the dishes while his father was cutting up some fruits. Dante smiled, took one of the sliced apples, and took a bite with relish. Well, good to see someone is up and in a good mood, his father remarked with a stoic expression. Of course, you always told me growing up that the best way to start the day is with a positive mind, as it affects your success in all endeavors. Dante replied while opening the fridge for some milk. David smiled slightly but suppressed it and nodded. Good to see you remember. It will help you now that you're an adult. Speaking of an adult, I want to accomplish something and acquire some advanced life skills. To that end, I rented a one-bedroom studio apartment in the mini estate on the west side of the city. Dante wore a solemn expression and faced his father. Dad, I think it's about time the bird left the nest and learned how to fly on its own. What do you think? David paused and looked at Dante with a raised eyebrow. He then nodded and smiled slightly. Sure, as long as you remain safe and know what you're doing. That's all. No fierce rejection. What about you, Mom? How do you feel? Dante asked cautiously. His mother placed the last dish in the rack and then removed her gloves before inverting them and carefully placing them to the side. She turned and walked to Dante with a gentle look. Well, I'm not too happy that my baby is leaving. However, I've greedily kept you around for 21 years, I can't always keep you forever. She then hesitated and made a soft request. Just make sure to call often as well as to come and check in on us, okay? Dante felt his heart soften. Ah, Mom, you're so cute. He moved to hug his mother and kissed her on each side of her cheek, which she received with a roll of her eyes. Dante then turned to look at his dad, who looked back at him calmly. Dante wisely chose not to try that with him. He was sure he wouldn't be leaving the house with his head attached if he did. Right then, I'm going to go pack and then move out ASAP. There are a lot of things I want to try and learn in the coming month. Dante confessed with a smile. Sure, go ahead. When you're done, we'll go ahead and drop you there so we see where you are in case of an emergency. David commented calmly. Dante nodded and walked upstairs, his heart feeling heavy. However, he knew he couldn't be going in and out of an alternate universe in his parents' house. He didn't have much to pack, only his laptop, some books, and some clothes. He didn't even pack toiletries and the like because he could buy new ones and also because he would come home often if things got too hot at his other place.